That's a good question. I'm not quite sure I would say it's the end of an era, because the wall is to a great degree more an idea than a reality. As you know, there has not yet been any money allocated to build the wall. There is no wall at present. There are just a few little barriers here and there. But on top of that, we know perfectly well from lots and lots of studies that the largest number of undocumented immigrants who arrive in the United States don't arrive by walking across the border with Mexico. They arrive as tourists, flying in the way that other people visit the country, and they simply stay. And so this is to a great degree something that is purely symbolic. Can one say that the non-building of something that's symbolic is the end of an era? I don't know. The only thing one can say is that the fact that this has become such a fetish for a segment of the Republican Party itself tells you something about the rise of xenophobia, not just in the United States, but in other countries around the world. Because the fears, for the most part, are not in the slightest well-founded. It's hard to say. That would be like saying if you're worried about being attacked by rogue elephants while walking through Geneva, what would be the most effective solution to that? It's not necessarily to put up walls against rogue elephants. It might be to say that maybe you should take another look at reality. That said, the concerns, it seems to me, have almost nothing to do with anything that's actually concrete. It's not, for example, that the vast majority of people who are opposed to immigrants have lost their jobs or have problems with wages. There are problems with wages, but those are long-term structural problems that have very little to do with immigration. On the other hand, what we can say is that their concerns are the type of thing where there's an enormous amount of scapegoating going on. And so in that regard, the very fact that the wall, if it were ever to be built, which I'm still dubious about, would almost surely not actually have very much effect on the economy is perhaps beside the point. The point is for politicians like Trump and others to show that they hate the same people that their voters hate. Certainly there is a connection. If you look at the past, it's not that since, for example, the end of the Second World War, there have been no walls. There are some very famous walls, or infamous, depending on one's point of view. But those walls, if I could generalize, and there are of course exceptions, were walls that were mostly aimed at keeping populations inside. One thinks, for example, of the various walls connected with the Iron Curtain, the Berlin Wall. One thinks also, for example, of the walls that were established in Belfast and the walls that the Israelis established in various occupied territories. So those were walls, if I could generalize, that had to do with keeping people in. The new types of walls that are people talking about now are walls that aim at keeping people out. And while that may seem like a trivial issue, it's actually very, very important. One is a case of a regime that know that they can't hold on, and that otherwise, if they don't confine the population, they're going to have problems. In the other situation, it's members of the public and of course politicians that are precisely trying, as I said a moment ago, to respond to the symbolic fears that people have. And in that regard, I think it is a change. Because if you do a little thought exercise and imagine that somebody had proposed this 25 years ago, it would never have gotten off the ground. It tells you the extent to which there has been a generalized rise throughout a number of countries around the world of xenophobia and of intolerance, and the fact that now these are considered acceptable in a way that even 10 years ago they would not have been. So that's something that is actually very, very worrisome. Not the wall itself or the walls themselves, but rather the walls as a symptom. The very fact that they're being talked about and actually taken seriously by some people is a symptom of exactly the terrible times in which we currently find ourselves.